Hello, students. This is your makeup work from Tuesday, January 5th. You can find the work that we did in class here in Google Meet, or sorry, in Google Classroom under Tuesday, January 5th Meet Natural Selection. When you click on this, you'll see that there are three things that we did in class. So we're going to go over the first part of an example for natural selection together, and that's going to be mostly notes for you. We did a little bit of discussion in class, and so you may find that I ask a few questions as we go along. The second thing is that we're going to talk about our vocabulary homework. You can find your vocabulary homework loose here in the January 4th through 8th topic. So this is due by Friday. It's very short, it's on Quizlet. And all you need to do is go over to Quizlet. You'll have to join. I set up new classes for the new year. So you'll need to join Quizlet, and I am able to see your progress. So you don't have to upload anything when you get finished with it. You can just go into this vocab natural selection due January 8th into this assignment and just click turn in or mark as complete when you're finished. Okay. Your homework, so your work for Wednesday, will be to just finish the second part of the example for natural selection. And that's just your work for Wednesday. There's nothing else that you need to do for Wednesday except for that, unless you want to go ahead and work on that vocabulary. Grading for today is that you will get a formative grade for the first part of the natural selection work. That's the first claim evidence reasoning section that I'm going to go over with you just now. That's going to be today's formative grade or um, Tuesday, January 5th formative grade. The second part of the grading is the second part of the natural selection work. So that's the second claim evidence reasoning and the last question. There's a last question that doesn't really have anything to do with, well, it's not part of the CER. It has plenty to do with the CER. Um, it's not a claim evidence or reasoning part. It's something that you'll use as kind of an extension and a prediction for the future. So that's going to be Wednesday's participation and formative grade. So make sure that you get that done either Tuesday evening or Wednesday. When is this due? First part was due at the end of class on Tuesday. So if you're watching this, you're probably making it up. And the second part is due by the end of the day on Wednesday. What's the makeup for this? Well, I'm putting together the video right now. So finish watching the video. So finish this video and do the first part as we go. What does your work look like? Well, it is going to look like this here. Um, and so you are going to read a little story. I'm going to go through that with you. You're going to use your data table up here at the top. And then there's some words that we're going to use. And you're going to put the information that I go over with you here in the claim, the evidence, the reasoning. And so you'll fill in those three sections. What you'll do on your own is this 3 and 4. So this claim and evidence and reasoning down here at the bottom. And then um, you're going to answer this natural selection reproduction part right here on your own. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to scoot over here to my key and allow you guys to see this. So what I would like for you to do is to kind of listen as I go through here, maybe follow along if you want. I'm going to read this and then I'm going to go through a little slideshow that will help you to see kind of what this looks like. So your paper says, you can find populations of rock pocket mice all over the Sonoran Desert in the southwestern United States. There are two common varieties of these mice, a light colored variety and a dark colored variety. There are also two major colors of substrate or surface materials that make up the desert floor. Most of the desert is covered in light colored sand and rock. However, there are also patches of dark volcanic rocks that formed from cooling lava flows. These patches of dark colored substrate are often separated by several kilometers of light colored substrate. At the end of year one of a scientific study of the mice, a lava flow occurs and the light colored sand environment is now covered in dark igneous rock. Okay, so let's take a look at what that actually looks like. So let me pull this down here for us to look at. Okay, so here we are within our environment in the Sonoran Desert, and here are little rock pocket mice. These little guys are really small. They're probably about an ounce or so in size. And one of the researchers that I've listened to on some of the videos that we use with this, um, he calls these little guys the Snickers bar of the desert, which I think is hilarious. Um, but that basically says that everything eats them. They're just kind of a little snack. There are a lot of predators that eat them, and so they're kind of vulnerable. So there is some variation within the rock pocket mice. There are dark rock pocket mice and there are light rock pocket mice. So this is called variation. That means that there's a difference in the coloration. So that just means that there are more than one color available. So adaptation is the word that we need to think about here. And in our level of science, we don't talk about the word to adapt because that sounds like these little mice can go out and they can pick a different fur color coat, that they make a decision to change themselves. And that's not what happens. And we're going to see why that's not what happens on our next slide. But an adaptation is something that allows the organism to do well in its environment. It allows it to survive and also to reproduce. So the light colored mice on all of this light colored sand, they have an adaptation. They are the ones that are mostly able to survive and reproduce. So, how do we get the colors? Well, if we think back to what we covered in the earlier part of this year, we talked a lot about genetics. And so here's one of the mice, and it has a normal light colored coding gene, and it also has a dark color coding gene. So this mouse is going to be light. This mouse over here has the exact same, a dark color and a light color. Um, so when these mice cross, they're going to get some variety of offspring. Some of the mice are going to be light colored, and they may be homozygous for the light color, or these light colored mice could also be like their parents and be heterozygous. But you're also going to get some mice that may be homozygous recessive or homozygous for the mutant form of this gene, which gives them a dark color. So the way that this passes on is through inheritance, through the genetics that we've covered in class already this year. So the mice inherited a form of the MRC1 gene that determines uh, fur color. So this is the dark version of that gene. Okay, so this tells us because this little mouse has this set of chromosomes, this pair of chromosomes here, all throughout its body, this little mouse is not going to be able to turn into a light colored mouse. This little guy right here is going to stay dark colored. This little guy right here is going to stay light colored. This person, or sorry, not a person, this little mouse cannot change its fur color to dark. This little mouse cannot change its fur color to dark. The little mouse is going to stay light. So now we have a new word, and that new word is called selective pressure. So predators such as owls, snakes, and falcons can see and catch those mice who are not camouflaged in their environment. So if you are a predator and you are looking for food, are you going to want to work really hard or are you going to want to maybe not work quite so hard? Well, most likely you're not going to want to work very hard. So you're going to just get the prey that you can see most easily. And so the little dark mice are the ones that tend to stand out more on this light substrate, so the light colored sand. So the light mice, well, you're going to probably have more of them because they're the ones that survive and reproduce. These little guys, the little dark colored ones on this light sand, they become lunch or the Snickers bar snack. Well, you'll see this on your paper, and we're going to talk about a study that was done. So during this study, there was a long time of just kind of stable um, environment, but right after the study started, there was kind of an issue, and that is that there was a volcano flow, so a lava flow. And so this lava flow flowed all through this area, and what used to be light colored sand now has become hardened lava. And so this hardened lava is dark in color. So what we see now is that there's a change in the environment, and that change provides a better environment for the dark colored mice. So again, these little light colored guys did better on the sand. These little dark colored guys are going to do better on this dark colored lava. So now we have a different adaptation. It's no longer an adaptation, it's no longer a benefit for the light colored mice to be light colored on light colored sand. The light color is now on dark colored substrate or dark colored lava. So, guess who's going to be eaten for a snack now? That's right. The light colored mice are the ones that are most likely to be eaten. The dark colored mice are the ones that blend in better. So we say that they have an adaptation. We also say that they are selected for. They're the ones that are more likely to be able to survive and reproduce. So over time, we'll see that there's going to be a change in the percentages of the mice. So here we've just got one little mouse, kind of a representative mouse that's light colored. Everything else is dark colored. So when we go back over to our worksheet, we're going to see that that's actually what we found in the percentages of mice. So the percentages of light colored mice started out at 90. And where did they get to by the end of the 5 years or of the five samples? Would be 12 years. Yeah, we had a decrease from 90% light colored mice to 17% light colored mice. So those light colored mice, they're not surviving very well and they're not reproducing very well. What we see with the dark colored mice is that we have a small number here and a much larger number down here at the end, which tells us that the percentage of dark colored mice is increasing quite a bit. So we're going to work first of all with the light colored mice. And we're going to use several of these terms that are in the bright blue um, as we go through this. So when we're working with this natural selection, we're talking about it in terms of claim evidence reasoning because it works really well that way. So for our claim, we're going to say that natural selection leads to a decrease in light colored mice in the population over time. It's a very simple claim, and that's all that it needs to be. So natural selection leads to a decrease in light colored mice in the population over time. You'll need to write this into your paper at this point in time. So you have a copy of this, and that was going to become your notes. So go ahead and you can pause the video and just type this into your paper. So natural selection leads to a decrease in light colored mice in the population over time. Okay, now let's talk about the evidence. There are two pieces of evidence that I want to put into here. One is that we have both light and dark colored substrate in the environment. The other piece of evidence is that in the years after the volcanic eruption, the population of light colored mice decreased from 90% to 17%. What you'll notice here is that in the evidence, when I'm talking about it, I'm not going to say every single thing that happened in that data table. We have the data table, so we can go back and look at it. All we need to do is tell what happened within the time period that's given in the data table. And that is that the light colored mice decreased from 90% of the population to 17%. Take just a second and put this into your paper. Okay, so the last part of the reasoning that we will do, or the last part of the CER that we'll do, is reasoning. And this is where we explain the science behind our claim and how our evidence supports our claim. So this is where we're going to use some new words. And remember, those words are up here at the top so that you can see what vocabulary we need to be able to work with. Here's our reasoning. The light colored mice's adaptation, and remember we talked about that already, they're not, we're not going to say that they're adapting because that sounds like individual mice are going out and changing their coat colors. And we know that that can't happen because of the genetics involved. So we're going to just use this in the noun form. We're going to say that the light colored mice's adaptation of light fur color gave them, and here's a new word for you, a selective advantage. The opposite of selective advantage would be selective disadvantage. But in this case, we have an advantage as long as the substrate was light colored. However, when the volcano erupted and caused the substrate to be darker, and remember, substrate just means the ground material, the change in environment exerted, here's a new word, selective pressure against the light colored mice. So we would say in this instance that the light colored mice were selected against. In this case, we could also say that the light colored mice are at a selective disadvantage. So that's using our vocabulary in that first paragraph. Second paragraph. Over time, natural selection will cause the light fur color to decrease in this population due to the increased likelihood that the light colored mice will be seen by predators and eaten. They'll become the snacks. This will lead to fewer light colored mice surviving and reproducing. So that's our explanation for how we ended up with a smaller percentage. And this is what natural selection looks like. So, natural selection, in contrast to artificial selection, natural selection is what happens within an environment. Artificial selection is when humans intervene, when humans interfere with what's naturally going to go on. In our case, we're now going to look at natural selection. Now, there's no committee that selects for or against certain organisms, but the environment will be will provide favorable conditions or select for some individuals, and will provide unfavorable or not as favorable conditions for others, and therefore select against them. If an organism is being selected for, that's a selective advantage. If organisms are being, or if a trait is being selected for, then that organism that has that trait will have a selective advantage. If the trait is being selected against, then that organism will have a selective disadvantage. And we call that whole um, change selective pressure. Okay? You will just need to make sure that you have the claim, evidence, and reasoning from this video in your own piece, in your own work. And then on Wednesday, your work will be to make sure that you go through and finish the last part of this. Hope you have a good day. See you in class on Thursday.